Hey folks, this lesson is finding complex solutions of quadratic equations. This lesson emphasizes completing the square. All right, so our question here is how can we find complex solutions of any quadratic equation? All right, so recall when you complete the square for x squared plus bx, we always add half of b squared, okay, or b over 2 squared, okay? And then so what that does is gives us the perfect square trinomial x squared plus b over 2 squared, okay? And so just, and then it always factors to a nice binomial squared. That's the goal of completing the square, so it gives us this binomial squared. This number right here is the number that was being squared that goes inside of here, okay? This sign right here is always this sign right here, okay? And just remember that when you add b over 2 squared to one side, you got to add it to the other side. All right, so steps for solving quadratics by completing the square of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Okay, so add out c to both sides, and so you get ax squared plus bx equals negative c. All right, now we're going to show you a different method here. So probably your teacher showed you this method already. I didn't because the book didn't, so this is another method. So if a is not 1, then divide everything by a to make it 1. So divide by a, divide by a, divide by a, and it gets us that. Okay, now we take half of this guy and square it. Okay, so we take half of b over a. Well, how do you take half of a fraction? Just double the denominator. Okay, put a 2 down there. Okay, and then we're going to square that, so it's b over 2a squared, so that gets us b squared over 4a squared, and then add that to both sides, okay, and then just factor and solve. All right, let's try some. So solve by completing the square, and then the second sentence says state whether the solutions are real or not real, okay? So here we go. Let's add out that 2, okay? So we're going to go ahead and add out, here's the steps, add out c, so we're going to go plus 2 plus 2. Notice I left a space right there because we're going to add a number right here and a number right here. Okay, this step says if a is not 1, well here a is 1, so nice and easy. Okay, and I like this because it's even. So now we're going to go ahead and take half of this number. Half of 8 is 4. 4 squared is 16. That's the number that we add to both sides. Okay, and then this factors to x, and then this sign goes in the middle, x plus, it's the number that was being squared, so x plus 4 quantity squared over here 2 plus 16 equals 18. Okay, square root both sides, don't forget your plus or minus. 18 is 9 times 2, so the square root of 9 is 3, and there's the square root of 2. Okay, so don't forget your plus or minus. I still have students still forgetting when you square root both sides, you got to have a plus or minus when you have a variable with the equation right there. Okay, then we'll subtract 4, so we get negative 4 plus or minus 3 root 2. Okay, and these are both real solutions because there's no imaginaries. Imaginaries is if we had negatives inside the radical right here. Your book will write it as negative 4 plus 3 root 2, comma, negative 4 minus 3 root 2. I think it's more efficient to write it with the plus or minus right there. Okay, and if we got to application problems, which are coming up, you guys, later on, not in the next section. There are applications in the next unit, part 2. But it's not solving. But if you did have application problems and they wanted to know like the time in seconds or whatever, the square root of 18 would probably be better than doing 3 root 2. 3 root 2 also simplifies to 4.2. Square root of 2 is something, some decimal, and then multiply it by 3 and you get 4.2. Or just square root 18, you get 4.2. So here's negative 4 plus 4.2. Here's negative 4 minus 4.2. Okay. All right. So, but for now, we want these simplified radical answers. Those are the kind of answers we want right there. Okay. So here. Okay. So let's go ahead and add out that 4. Okay. So I'm just putting arrows here. We're going to add out c. Okay. So we did plus 4 plus 4. Okay. Now this step says if a is not 1, then make it 1. So we're going to make this is 3x squared. So we want it to be a 1x squared. So we divided everything by 3, divided by 3, divided by 3, divided by 3, and we get this guy right here. Okay, now we take half of 3. How do you take half of a number that's odd? Put a 2 underneath it. So half of 3 is 3 halves. 3 halves squared is 9 fourths. 3 squared is 9. 2 squared is 4. So that's the number that we add to both sides. Okay, so we took half of this number, squared it, and then we added that to both sides. All right, now we factor. This factors to x plus, this number that was being squared was 3/2, so it's x plus 3/2 squared equals, and I changed 2 to 8/4 so we can add it to 9/4 and get 17/4 over there, okay? And then so we can go ahead and square root both sides. Don't forget your plus or minus. The square root of 17 over the square root of 4 is 2. Okay, so now we can subtract 3/2 from both sides, and we get, your book actually writes it like this, negative 3/2 plus root 17/2, or negative 3/2 minus root 17/2. I like to write it with the same denominator, negative 3 plus or minus root 17 all over 2. All other textbooks that I've worked with usually give this kind of answer. This book likes to give it in this answer with the plus part and the minus part. There's no i's, so those are real solutions right there. Okay, this one's pretty easy because that's a 1x squared and that one's even. Let's get rid of the 7. Minus 7 minus 7, okay? And then we're going to take half of 2. Half of 2 is 1. 1 squared is 1. Factor. Okay, here we get negative 6. So when we square root negative 6, we get an I. Okay, so the square root of negative 6 is I root 6. And 6 is 2 times 3, so nothing comes out. So plus 1, and we get 1 plus or minus I root 6. Okay, and the I tells us it's imaginary, it's not real. Okay, all right, so this one looks just like your number 7 that's on your assignment. I just changed one number. I forgot which one it was, but it's just like your number 7. Okay, so let's, now the C's already added out, so we don't have to worry about that. So now we're going to divide everything by 7. Okay, so we have fractions. How do you take half of this fraction right here? 17 over 7, you double the denominator. So it's 17 over 14, okay? So half of that, and then we're going to square that to add that to both sides. So 17 squared is 289, 14 squared is 196. So I added that to both sides. I purposely left a space there because I'm going to get a common denominator. 7 goes into 196. It goes in evenly 28 times. So multiply it by 28 over 28, or 1, and then we get 84 over 196. So now we can go ahead and add 84 plus 289 over 196, and we get 373. Okay, this side factors too. Remember, this number right here is what was being squared, so 17/4. Okay, don't forget your plus or minus when we square root both sides. Okay, square root of 373, I think that's prime, you guys, over square root of 196 is still 14. So now we'll subtract 17 over 14 on both sides, and we get negative 17 plus or minus root 373 all over 14. There's no i's, so those are real solutions. Okay, one more. All right, and for this lesson, I forgot, you guys, this book is downplaying your quadratic formula, although that's coming up in part 2, because they want you to get good at completing the square. And when we get into our circles chapter, which is right around the corner, it's all about completing the square. So that doesn't go away, you guys. We're going to complete the square a lot, and I think it's the next module. Anyway, so, and we're skipping a couple of modules also. So anyway, so recall, you guys, the discriminant is the b squared minus 4ac. Okay, so if it's greater than 0, that tells us there's 2 real solutions. If it's equals 0, there's 1 solution. If it's less than 0, then there's non-real solutions. There's 2 imaginary solutions, or 2 non-real solutions. Okay. So without solving, state the number of solutions and tell whether they are real or not real. Okay, so has to equal 0, so we can do the b squared minus 4ac. That's a, that's b, that's c. Okay, so b squared minus 4ac gives us 5 squared minus 4 times a is 4, and then times c is 3. Okay, so 25 minus, let's see, 16 times 3 is 48, so 25 minus 48 is 23. Okay, so since it's not positive, it's less than 0, negative 23 is less than 0, that just tells us there's 2 non-real solutions. Okay, that's our answer. Okay, let's try this one. Okay, this one we have to make it equal to 0. So we got to subtract 40x on both sides, and then b squared minus 4ac is negative 40 squared minus 4 times a times c. Okay, that's 1600. This is 100. 100 times 16 is 1600, so we get 1600 minus 1600. Okay, if it equals 0, then that tells us there's one real solution. That just tells us that that parabola entered the vertex is right on the x-axis. So anyways, all right, if you're in our class, that's going to be your assignment. Take care.